Welcome to the February 16th, 2017 meeting of the Murfreesboro City Council. If you'll bow your heads, I'll handle the prayer. Father, I thank you for this day, this chance that we get to be together. I thank you for the wonderful city that we live in, for the residents that make up this city and the things that happen here every day. Lord, we ask you just to bless this time that we have together. Let us make decisions that will be fitting to you. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We don't have any ceremonial items except to say that MTSU, the ladies and the men, are all playing Western Kentucky about right now. And many of us who sit up here will tell you that MTSU is a great place to be. Western Kentucky, we hope you lose. Consent agenda. You've got a few things in front of you on your consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. You've got 3 meetings of minutes in front of you. January 12th, 2017, January 19th, 2017, the special meeting, and January 19th, 2017, the regular meeting.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Second readings. Consider for passage on second and final reading ordinance 17004 to amend the City Code, Chapter 25, Schools, Section 25-2 regarding compensation of school board members.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. New business. A letter of recommendations from the IT director to convert Munis and Encode systems to the SaaS cloud-based solutions. And I have no idea what that is, but I'm sure you'll explain that to us.
Yeah, it is. It's a long title. Good evening, Mayor McFarland, Vice Mayor Skels Harris, and the members of City Council. Back in July 2015, the city's new ERP system, Munis, was launched with much success. The software manages enterprise-wide resources such as city's budgeting, fund accounting, payroll, and human resource information. We will also be rolling out a new municipal court software in the fourth quarter of this fiscal year, which is running on the same platform. The current version that we use is known as an on-premise version. This version requires that we purchase and maintain server hardware and to keep it powerful enough to support a constantly changing software platform for a constantly growing city. When you add up the monthly to quarterly security patches and security updates, that makes supporting this system a moving target. The content alone in 2 years' time has nearly filled up our servers to capacity. The IT department, along with the finance department and city court, recommend that we convert our Munis and court systems to the SaaS, our software as a service model. This will present several operational and financial benefits, such as minimizing security risk, fixed costs to hardware and software for the term of the contract, secure fault-tolerant servers to ensure connectivity and availability. Upgrades and enhancements are performed by Munis engineers and developers. Increase remote access abilities, and last but not least, a significant return on investment over the course of the contract. With that being said, conversion efforts will require a budget amendment of $212,000. The additional expense will be paid from the cash in fund balance and will be presented as the next agenda item if this recommendation is approved. After year 1, support costs will significantly decrease, ultimately saving the city approximately $305,000. I open for any questions.
Term of the contract is 6 years, is that right? Or
Yes, it is.
Chris, are there any other cities around us who have already gone to this?
Yes, there are cities that have gone to the cloud version. One of them, part of it is being used by City of Clarksville.
And they've had really good luck with it, I assume?
Yes, they have. It reduces your technical footprint. We have to run a data center to ensure that several different things are up to par, so that our servers run efficiently. And when we're talking about humidity, we're talking about temperature, and then also keeping our servers safe. With going to the software as a service model, or what you've heard as the cloud model, we're actually able to leverage our hardware with other clients, and for it to be hosted at data centers that are certified to run this equipment, and we don't have to worry about keeping up with the requirements of our software updates, our major releases. So, kind of really it's a win-win situation.
Chris, this is very similar to what many different private businesses, banks that are all doing this type of disaster recovery and keeping things off-site. Is that similar to what others are doing?
Yes, that is similar.
Okay.
So you boil it down, security and maintenance, is that basically what we're purchasing? Is security and...
Security, maintenance, disaster contingency.
Okay.
We want to make sure it's available because it is enterprise-wide and it's managing a lot. I mean, everyone touches it. And we're looking at right now, without going into the details, going from risk assessment of we want to make sure we protect the servers, and we have another server in another location. We try to keep it in another part of town, but we're looking at going from that. If we go with software as a service, we're looking at our information being protected as regionally. So we actually have up in Falmouth, Maine, we'll have a data center. If that data center were to go down, we have another one down in Dallas, Texas. If that one goes down, we have another one out west.
Redundancy, or cloud-based redundancy?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, I make the motion to approve.
Second. You think you're planning commission?
I know, that's what.
Mr. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll need to amend Exhibit A of our ordinance 17005.
Thank you.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Wright?
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll now need to consider for passage on second and final reading as amended ordinance 17005 to amend the 2016-2017 budget, the third amendment.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Wright?
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Move into other new business. Consider recommendations of the Parks and Recreation Director for Miracle Field Change Order Number 4.
Good evening. As you know, the Miracle Field is currently being developed in McKnight Park. This project includes accessible athletic fields and amenities, including a really nice playground that will serve children with special needs, as well as many other children in Murfreesboro. The project is coming along well, and we are targeting that April 1st grand opening date. This is change order number 4, and it adds the following features: a video scoreboard and installation, climate-controlled scorer's booth with weatherproof IT equipment box and built-in tables, complex-wide audio system, ornamental safety fencing at the playground zip line, overseed sodding at the softball fields with a credit for the sprigs, sponsored on-deck circles for the softball field, and precast bases at the fountain for our dedication and sponsorship plaques. The change order also incorporates the contractor's request for 27 weather delays in accordance with the project specifications. As you know, this project is a partnership between the City of Murfreesboro and Project 14, which is a foundation that was created by former Murfreesboro resident and current Major League pitcher David Price. The fiscal impact of this project is The current contract amount for the project itself is $3,108,972. Change order 4 adds $113,207.35, making the total contract $3.2 million. $3,222,179.10. To date, $535,000 has been donated for the project, and $2,750,000 is available in the CIP funding. Project 1-4 continues to seek donation and has additional fundraising events and opportunities that are scheduled and upcoming. Welcome any questions that you have.
April Fool Day dedication?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm sure it's going to be beautiful.
Awesome. I move for approval.
A second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaVance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Item B has been pulled from the agenda. Consider recommendations. The assistant city manager is doing better, but you'll be the city manager, I guess, to discuss purchase approximately 6.9 acres of city-owned real estate on Medical Center Parkway.
Sure. Spoke to Mr. Crumley today. He is feeling much better, so I'm encouraged by some good news about him. Let me talk a really big picture about the proposal before you, and then I'll go into some details, and then the developer does have a presentation he would like to share with you. The city, in acquiring the Gateway property, has a corporate headquarters site. The city also had a former demolition landfill located further east that is along the Greenway. In between the city's Gateway property and the former demolition landfill, there is some private property. And this project is really about a desire from the private developer to acquire the city land in between to combine it for a development that would include an assisted living facility, as well as condominiums, a restaurant, and some potential mixed-use property. The land that would be sold by the city, if you're I know you're familiar with the site, there is the hillside. There is a little notch in the corporate headquarters site and some land along the river that's encumbered by both the floodplain and floodway. Probably the most valuable piece of property being sought is about a 2.8 acre parcel that fronts on Medical Center Parkway. Recently there was a log cabin moved or getting ready to be moved. It was adjacent to that. So it is a flat 2.8 acres on the top of that bank. As well as to make some of their livability ratios and open space requirements, they do seek to acquire a portion of the former demolition landfill. The cost of that would be $1 per square foot. The parcel that fronts on Medical Center Parkway would sell for $12 a square foot. All in all, the total sale is north of $2.25 million. It would be about 7 acres. The Lifestyle Development Group is in the assisted living business. They have a 160,000 plus square foot facility that they would seek to build on the combined parcels that they have currently under contract, as well as the city-owned land. And then along the front, they would seek to have that developed, perhaps by others, for up to 130 some condominium units. Let me talk very quickly about the deal points. Then perhaps Mr. Tallman could come forward with some additional explanation. Among the deal points, in addition to the purchase price that I mentioned, the buyer and the city would agree to equally share in the cost of extending Warren Street. Now, this is important to the city because Warren Street would be adjacent to the relocated Fire Station number 4. The city and the buyer would equally share in the traffic signal at that intersection. The buyer, at their sole expense, would not involve the city, would build a right turn lane from Medical Center Parkway onto Warren Street, and the buyer would contribute some soils generated by grading to the city for that fire station site. So Mr. Tallman perhaps could come forward, and then Mayor, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll have my chief of staff send out pass out some brochures, and we'll put some boards up in front so you can see a little bit better view of it.
Thank you.
While Jim is doing that, I want to acknowledge Mr. Brett as a man of service. He served in the Navy for 12 years as a deep-sea scuba diver. His wife was a deep-sea scuba diver. His son just reached the pinnacle of his career in the Navy after many years. He's 31 years old, and he was voted in the top 6 of Navy sailors in the entire Atlantic Fleet. Quite an accolade for Jim and his son. So we'll go over the books for you a little bit, let you take a look at it. We're excited about the project. We've been in escrow on the private land for over a year and working diligently, spent many dollars to get us to a point where we know that we can go ahead and put it out front if you can. We've got our budgets. We actually have the senior assisted living facility that's already designed and complete with CDs, and we will in fact build that community. We have one very similar going in Huntsville, Alabama. It's about 90 days away from construction, and the exact building that's going into this site for assisted living, it includes independent living, 114 units. It'll include 36 assisted living and 15 memory care. They call it resort housing for the elderly. It really is. That's the way the industry is going. We're excited about Murfreesboro. When we started researching the market almost 2 years ago, it's a little hard to get your arms around it from the data points because all of the people that help us finance this and make it work said, show me the data. So let me see where the numbers are. And Murfreesboro is an exciting city where you got to get into it. You got to drive around with a guy like Shelby and understand who lives here and where the income streams are and where mom and dad is at, in terms of their living style. As for the condominiums, we've worked real hard to come up with some models that I think will represent that. We show you a couple of elevations and a photograph of a particular building that we think will fit there. We've over a period of time looking at that point between Jim Crumley and some others here in staff, I said, boy, it'd be cool to have a restaurant out on the point that everybody could walk and enjoy and watch the river go by. We're going to connect all of the pedestrian ways there that go throughout your city and do some pretty, as my architect suggests, some real walkable, livable type of environment where you can feel like you can walk around and enjoy the space. As Life Centers is concerned, we're excited about it for a real core reason. In the things that we do within our assisted living and seniors housing business, we like to do more than just build a building on a particular piece of dirt. Our vision is to buy more dirt than we need and find other influences that will help extend and enjoy the life of our seniors. We work with national operations people. We're the developers. We have DMK Development Group out of Louisville, Kentucky. They've been at it for 30 years, over 150,000 deals that they've done over 30 years. So it's just an amazing company. They really do their job well. And so as I said, they're building this exact building in Lexington. They're probably 90 days, maybe 120 days from opening. So any questions, I'll be glad to field them for you.
Any questions?
Does that private park, it says proposed private park for Life Center and condo owners, is that already under contract or?
It's proposed to be under contract with
Is
y'all.
that what this is?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it is.
Is that the former landfill site or what is it?
It is.
Yeah. Okay.
So in our package, it says that you guys may be the lead developer, but you could potentially sell or convey the forward property out there for the condominiums to someone else.
We're in discussions with several. Beazer Homes came to the table. We've got relationships with Old South and with Goodall Homes and several others. One of our capital investors is building condominiums throughout the Middle Tennessee market. He's probably going to be the likely taker, but we have met with other very well-established and known builders. Beazer saw it more as a 55-plus type community because of the length.
Might you sell it?
We will in fact sell it, yeah. We do not build and
So we
sell
can't really,
condominiums.
my point is we won't have any certainty as to what they look like whatsoever. You might have some drawings here, but
That's, well, no. The Gateway District is so strict, and those that we've been talking to have a clear understanding of what your expectations are. So we'll put that within our deed restrictions, if you will, and our requirements for their build. It's important to us because our building is going to be quite huge.
can you build the Life Center facility without using this much of the city property?
No, sir. The piece we have under contract has about 3 acres of usable dirt, and then you got to import dirt, and then you're going to have your hill sitting up in the middle of the air. We'd have to build a wall around it. It'd be probably too expensive to build that way. So no, sir, we cannot.
But the 2.8 or 9 acres that's up here adjacent to the road, that's basically, I mean, that looks to me that's all going to be the condo parcel. Could you
Yes,
do
sir.
without
Yes,
that?
sir. Yes, sir. But the dirt will be moved downward towards the river and off towards the east to balance the site.
Look, I'll mention this just quickly as I can say it, but, I'm not feeling like us selling Gateway property, which we have a very finite amount of, for $34,000 a year jobs and condos or apartments is what the direction I'd like to go on this, especially without any certainty of what those condos really will look like under our gateway. They could be 150 feet tall right on the road right here. I'm not real sure. That's without us doing anything. As long as it conforms to the plan, that could happen. And actually I don't know if it's GDO 1 or GDO 2. I assume it's GDO 1 in that area, but
This is, I think it's GDO 4 in part and GDO 3 in the other. GDO 3 is the city-owned property, and GDO 4 goes from the city property toward Memorial Boulevard.
okay. So anyway, I can't see me approving it like it is we're trying to get higher paying jobs here and really not doing more condos and multifamily stuff, especially without some certainty of what they'd be like. I'll just leave it at that.
I think the plan from the senior living, next to our fire hall, I don't necessarily have the concept of the Life Center, senior living. I think we had talked with another developer that was coming through 3 weeks ago, and it was really on the mixed-use zoning, and the mixed-use zoning, and this was their property on a very liberal zoning on what's going to happen. So I can't say that I would be for or against the Life Center portion, but I do think the city property, if we're going to do anything that would be residential, because I don't think we've sold city-owned property for residential use, have we?
No, sir.
No.
Not
Okay.
yet.
Yeah, I think if we're going to do that, it's going to, in my opinion, it's going to have to go through as a plan development where we know what's coming, we know what it's going to look like. Some of the builders or developers you're talking about, fine groups, but I think we need to know, at least my thought, what's going there. Especially that's with this property, that's the most valuable piece of property. It's on the main thoroughfare going into our gateway across from the fountains. And the other question I would have is how the traffic network's going to work, because that 25, the thing that I see on here now, our 25-acre parcel, we're showing 2 roundabouts on there. What does that do to our corporate site?
Yeah, those are shown just for concept because we don't know who would use the corporate headquarters site.
Yeah.
In our plan, we took them out. There were some earlier drawings by city staff, I think. Or maybe it was SEC, I'm not sure. Those roundabouts make no sense. We agree to that.
That looks like a road.
And that's just my thought.
Will we require a light here with just this?
Well, at Warren Street, I think we had intended to put a light there for the fire station.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm,
It's gonna be
okay.
and it's gonna be a special light that operates in conjunction with the calls that go into the fire halls.
Correct.
Is there one way in to this complex, or is there going to be a street that stubs into this?
It'll circulate back with, I've been speaking with Rob and with Jim Crumley about creating a circulation out through the corporate center.
You can see a road that terminates into the corporate headquarters site. That was for, future potential connection. But until we know what happens on the corporate headquarters site, we don't know, but we did, see the need to stub it out.
And I want to also say, I think there is on this side of Thompson Lane, so I guess that'd be the east side of Thompson Lane.
Yeah.
I do think that there needs to be, in my opinion, some type of residential. I mean, I think when you talk to some of the corporations that are coming in, they want to see a work, live, play, to be able to walk to corporate jobs and those things. But my only thought is we need a little more information on more of the details, in my opinion.
Shane, I think you and I are thinking pretty much the same on this. I know that I think it absolutely has to be a PUD. I mean, as far as we need to see something other than what we've got here. I mean, this isn't fair to us, I don't think, to say vote on this. But the other thing that we're talking about is whether or not we want residential living in the gateway. And I think that is almost something that we need to think about, because when we look at the downtown area, the way it was developed in the past, it was kind of developed without residential areas. And, the more millennials I talk to, the more I realize that they don't want yards. They don't want, that there's actually situations that I think they're asking for a different demand, which this may be the product that they're looking for. But I just have to see something a lot more in depth than what we've been presented with. I mean, I don't say that I dislike it. I mean, I truly think that there needs to be a residential element there, and I don't know that this is a bad location for it. But we just have to have some assurance of what the quality of it is and what it's going to look like. And the developers you mentioned are all, I think, well respected in this community, and I don't think there's a huge concern. But there's a little bit of more freedom than I would personally like to give without a plan unit development on the residential section of it, at least where it's up there next to the roadway. I think we just need to see more.
That's a big part for me too, is the fact that that's going to be right there on the road. I mean, I agree, there needs to be some residential on this side, and I don't necessarily, I'm not saying it's a bad product. I'm just kind of saying I'm not sure having these high density residential right there on the road. I mean, it'd be easier if we already had the corporate site already done. I'd hate to have a corporate site come in and they said, well, we could do this, except we needed that 3 or 4 or that 6 or 7 acres over there to be able to use that dirt for our site. And all of a sudden we miss out on a big corporate reload because, to have some of this here. So I don't know, it's tough. I'm sorry, I'm sorry to just say it out loud, out front like I did, but it's, we have such a finite amount of this space to deal with that I just feel like I don't know, I guess maybe I'm more picky on it than others, but I would say the PUD is certainly something that I would say makes sense.
And you could require that as a condition of sale, that the city-owned parcel go through a plan development. Now, the condominium piece that you're showing, just so we're all fully aware, it appears that part of it would be on city-owned property, part of it is on private property that they already have under contract, but I think they're joined at the hip, that one doesn't work without the other.
And we're open to those conditions and looking at, well, what would happen if we didn't? Well, I'm going to lose a lot of money. We've been stating our case to staff and to Rob and Jim and others. And Mr. Mayor, we've met with you as well to define what that means. And I think that frontage piece is clearly an opportunity to do some residential over retail, and that's the intention.
And this is probably one of the higher speed sections on Medical Center Parkway, and truthfully, Ron Belishandro has explained to me several times that as we push these buildings, especially taller buildings, up towards the roadway, that it has a effect on the traffic flow of slowing the traffic down, which would actually be a good thing as far as, you know, as far as getting something up close to that roadway, rather than that. I tell you what, there's a herd of deer that's going to be extremely disappointed when we do anything on this property, because I mean,
It's true.
Every time I go by there, there's 7 or 8 deer in that field
Yeah,
right there.
yeah, that's true.
But
We do have a right in, right out cut end into the site. It's not real clear in the plans, but we're prepared to take it to the next step with, you know, agree to sell with these certain conditions.
So are you saying you're willing to come back to the table if we make a motion to make this a planned development with more detail?
On the city property
Yeah,
only.
on the city property only. More detailed information and more, really, we want to see pictures of what you got and what you're thinking about developing. Bless you.
Bless you.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm sensitive to the time. When we went to the Gateway District some months ago, I said, well, we'll be back to you with a contract within a few days. It was 2.5 months. Christmas didn't help, you know, the Thanksgiving holidays and everything. So we're running out of time with the current family. There were 6 people as heirs, they're now 1. So they're
I think that, you know,
They're anxious
perhaps
to
Mr.
sell and get
Tallman
closed.
to perhaps, you know, help you understand if this was the direction the council wanted to go, there would be a condition in the sales contract that would say your development plans would need to come forward with a planned development approach. You'd work with Mr. Whitaker
perfectly
on that.
sensible.
You'd have ownership of the property. It would just be the development of it would require you to go through a planned development process, which would
Absolutely.
take 3 to 4 months.
That's very acceptable.
Yeah,
It is.
risk,
And staff and I have talked about that very issue. To go to the next level, we're going to spend many thousands of dollars, and we're prepared to do that.
The risk is that, you know, the plan development is going to have to be something that gets through planning commission and city council, and so, you know, you would be buying the property without really knowing whether or not we're going to approve what you bring in the plan development. So understand that's just because you do a plan development doesn't mean it gets passed. It's that plan development is what we will be having to look at and decide if we think it's acceptable or not. So I don't this is of course just on the city-owned property, so I'll make sure that's you understand what that means.
It's an interesting balance, because when you look at the site plan, especially some documents that SCC I think has sent to staff, where it's a total of about I think 16 acres, no, 14.9 acres, I believe. And while it looks like when you add the park areas, 2.71 acres, 2.27 acres of parklands that we want, that almost 7 acres gets down to about 3. And the preponderance of the development is going to be on private land anyway. I totally understand the need to try to stay close to the vest with the Gateway District design and all of the function of what the city does. That's part of why we're excited about it, is that it creates that atmosphere of being able to go shopping and live there and walk to work and that kind of thing, and have grandma and grandpa next door, and have them enjoy that kind of environment as well.
So can you not make this happen without the 2.9 acres?
No, sir, it cannot. Yeah, well, sure, we could build a wall, leave your dirt up in the air, and import dirt. Probably would not be an affordable thing to do.
We can't sell you the dirt without selling you the land?
Interesting thought. Very interesting thought.
I don't know really the best thing to do other than, I mean, if we defer it a week.
I don't think we have to defer it. I think if we're all on the same page, we make them, the city-owned part, we make it PUD and come back with more detailed plans and detailed description of what type of condos, what they're going to look like.
I think what he's saying though is he doesn't have the time to do the PUD work before needing to take ownership. Is that? That's my only. I mean,
Well, I don't think we rush through it, and I think we get it the way we want to get it. It's our property, and it's our decision. I understand what he's saying, but I also understand this is not what we usually get that comes before us. It's not detailed enough to move forward, and I think putting some restrictions on there, it helps both parties.
Yeah, Mr. Wade, I think before we met, I was going through in the office and pulling out proposals. I was able to find the Fountains proposal when that came to us. And, I think it had 10 or 12 tabs and detailed information. And so I think what we're asking is we're not setting a new precedent. I think it's something that we've asked for with other developments as well.
I mean, they had it broke down to ice rinks and the type of pavement they want to be using and the buildings and how they were laid out. And it was a great deal of information that kind of gave us a more comfortable feeling as to what we were voting on right now. I mean, I think that we, and truly, I mean, the gateway, once you acquire the property, the gateway restrictions are going to determine the quality of the product.
Absolutely.
I've got absolute confidence in that part of it. It's just that I think there are occasionally aesthetic things and people have different interpretations of what the gateway overlay. I guess the most common one is the baseline on a building. I would hate for you to come to us and say, well, this is the building we're going to build and it not have a base on it, because apparently what we perceive and some developers perceive as a base on a building sometimes varies.
It varies.
I think the Planning Commission has a really warm feeling now of what we expect it to look like, and we have to see that picture in order to really say, yes, this is what we're looking for. And so I think that's,
had there been maybe a little bit more communication with Rob and I and maybe Jim and some other staff members, maybe I could have been prepared to do that. We've been trying to present materials in a prudent way and cost savings way as well. To date, we thought we had a lot of support. Tonight, it doesn't look like we do.
I don't think that's the case. I think you've got support. We're asking for a certain amount of documentation to go along with this.
Okay.
I think that's all we're saying, and we're not asking you to do anything different than anybody else.
Okay.
So we're saying if you are willing to, we're willing to approve this, the city portion, based on it being a PUD, and come back with more detailed information about your condos and what they're going to look like, detailed information.
I'm willing to take that risk. I've watched your city for a number of years now, and with the stuff that's going up on Thompson Lane and that beautiful product up there, it's clear you guys have a vision, and it matches our desire to do quality product. That's not an unreasonable risk on my side.
Hey, Rob.
Yes, sir.
What about the idea of selling the dirt with us keeping the frontage? You got any ideas?
You'd have to develop a grading plan where things would work for the corporate headquarters site. The city's corporate headquarters site, we mass graded the land when we purchased it. So I know the corporate headquarters site, it is an appropriate elevation. We're not going to need fill for that. But as Mr. Tallman mentioned, there's about a 16-foot grade difference between the corporate headquarters site and the 2.8 acre parcel. So in some sense, having a mass grading where that low spot of their property, where you can drag some of that 2.8 acre site in the hillside back to level it out, now creates all of those properties at the same elevation. I think comes out with a better look. To just sell them the dirt, I think I'd rather have the engineers take a look at that, answering that one off the top of my head. It seems to me if he was going to be able to grade it, it should work.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. That's kind of, if he's able to grade it to put a condo on it, we ought to be able to grade it, move the dirt, and put something what we thought would be more appropriate on the front, and we keep them. I mean, look, the part that we're selling, that 2.9 acres, is arguably, I think, the most valuable part, along with the frontage that they already own.
Correct.
So again, I don't know, look, you guys are I'm not exactly sure how the timing goes. I'm worried from a standpoint of if we agree to sell the property to them tonight under the condition that they come back to us with a PUD, that the PUD has to be, I'm a little bit worried about the whether or not we'll, I think we'll be able to get to an agreeable PUD to some extent, but I'm, at the other side of it, I just sit
You
here and
want a
think, why don't we
9-story
just-
building on the front.
and we can't really, a PUD is the only way we can really figure that, keep that from necessarily coming to fruition, and that may not be what 4 people up here, they may not have a problem with that at all. I'm just kind of stating my part is that I'm just trying to sit here and figure out, how we get the life center there, potentially the restaurant, get you the dirt you need, but maybe keep the property that we already own that's the most valuable to us that we're in dire need for. We're have such a finite number.
It's almost $2 million to grade this property, and that's a lot of money, plus paying you for the dirt. I don't know if it would be an economical thing that you all would want to do,
So often when we look at tall buildings and we have concerns with tall buildings, generally it's because it's looking into somebody's backyard or it's looking into somebody's property that has a very large objection to it. Because of the geographic location of this property, I don't really think we're going to have that concern at all. We've got rivers and roadways and fire stations that you're going to be overlooking, and of course on the other side, I guess we'll have a major complex that'll probably use some of the services provided here as far as the condos and living space. I think it goes with the direction that we're trying to take our downtown area, and so I don't really have a significant concern. I guess the best thing for us to do is to vote on it and see if we've got enough votes to get you what you want. And so I'll go ahead and make the motion that we approve with the understanding that there has to be a PUD on the property that the city is selling.
Second.
All right. Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mayor, if I could, just to clarify, so the motion is that we would sell it with the contingency in there they provide documents that would essentially equate to a PUD, that we're not changing the zoning. We're not agreeing by contract to change the zoning as we go about it. So I just want to clarify the motion and what we're going to reflect in the documents itself.
That's the intent, yes. So
All right, let me make.
That was for the record. I knew you understood.
So,
that.
yes.
For the record, I want to make
Mr.
sure.
Chandler, to make sure that if we say on the 2+ acres that's the city property, that we're expecting that to come back as a planned unit development, that's going to have to meet all the requirements. The plan development's going to have the books. It's got, or the details. It will have to be architecture, all of those things, and then it will have to be passed by the planning commission, and then it will also have to come to the city council.
Yeah, we'll have the planning we'll take a look at it to make sure, but I think what we'll probably do is have the planning commission look at it, make a recommendation to council, because again, we're not changing the zoning.
Right.
And we're looking at the documentation and making sure that it meets all the requirements that we have expectation, and then bring it back to council.
And what the
have
planning
council
commission would be looking at is the details.
It's the details, right.
So when we get our presentation, we're expecting to get details on what the building, what the materials that will be used, the percentage of glass on the building, where the landscaping is and what it looks like, that type of detailed information.
So my plan, let me tell you guys something. My plan would be to approve the ideas, because I don't want to just say I just won't even look at it. I want to be able to say, yeah, I'll at least look at it before I'm just going to say no. I'm a little concerned that if we do if we say we're not going to sort of force you to change the zone, but we're going to force you to do everything that would apply to a different zoning, like a PUD, that we may not be able to really enforce that. You know, we get down the road.
We would have to build an enforcement mechanism into the documents, the sale documents and the deed documents that we
You need
use.
a week to do that. I mean, I don't want to necessarily. I mean, you know, I don't want to defer it, but I don't want to put you in a spot where here we are 3 months from now, and we don't have our T's crossed and our I's dotted on this because we.
To draw up the documents as far as the land sale, you know, we could do that in a week or two.
On that contract.
Hmm?
Are we voting on a contract tonight that will not have that language in it?
We are.
You are?
Yeah, but we can put.
Well, we would be, we're asking for that language to be put in the contract. And
It'd have to be
contract's
amended into
contingent.
the contract.
Yeah.
These are
Yeah.
contract contingencies.
So I guess you'd vote on it if you wanted to vote on a contract tonight is a contract for sale that will be drafted consistent with council's direction that what comes back both to council and to planning commission is information that mirrors what would be required in a PUD for council to review and approve. In the event that it's not approved, you know, we'll have to build in a mechanism for modification if it needs to be modified or some way to unwind the deal.
You know, when you hit exactly on what I was thinking about, that from the protection of the other acreage that we have, that thinking worst case scenario, if the applicant brought through the plan development and that it didn't work for the planning commission or the city council, is there a mechanism that we could have that we could unwind the sale, purchase it back from the buyer, and that way the buyer's made whole and we get our property back?
Right. I assume that that's
That
what
would
the
not-
property would.
Not work. But here's what can work. You describe clearly what it is you want to see. I'll use that as my guide to do all the work that you want. The concern I have is I build senior assisted living and memory care and independent living. I don't build condominiums and retail. I have a driver in my own heart
Sure.
because of what I'm doing to make sure that it matches. And I think I've talked to some really quality people to help bring that about. So you give me some clear directions and put that in the contract. If it can be done in a timely manner, that's important. You know, we've extended closing several times already.
I think the part that's, and maybe we're on semantics, but, you know, a plan development is not up for interpretation.
No.
Yeah, so when we're asking for a plan development, we're really saying you're going to bring forward what you're going to do on that whole piece of property. This is the concept. This is the architecture. Here's the materials we're going to use. Here's what it's going to look like. Here's the landscaping. I mean, you are locking yourself into, this is what I'm going to do. So it's not, well, we want some pretty buildings that have hardy boards. I mean, you're locking yourself in. This is what I'm going to build. So
It's a bit of a challenge in the sense that I don't build that product. So
That's why I asked you that earlier.
yeah, and I
That's why was kinda
appreciate
getting
that. It's a little tough. So if Old South or Goodall or whoever comes to the table and says, I want to buy that land from you and I'll build it, give me the guidelines. And then we
see, I think you're making, in all due respect, I'm trying not to, you know, there's part of the project that I really like, but everything that you're saying is making the point from my standpoint. I can't speak for the council, but, you know, on the city property, we have an obligation to make sure what's going on that piece of property. And, I mean, in every property that we have approved that has been city-owned property, even going to Kasai, when Kasai came through, we saw, here's what the building is. I mean, we knew down to the patio furniture that they were going to use on their back property. We knew this is what they're doing. And what you're asking us is to go on faith that you're going to build a nice product, and we have, I'm sure you will, but unfortunately, we've not done that with anyone else. I mean, even Mr. Pirtle, who was the first guy who built the first 90,000 square foot building out there when no one else had built a building out there, it showed us, here's what I'm going to build. And there was nothing that was out there, and that was required. So if I'm not going to be able to support it if we can't have the details, I guess is where I am.
So do we have a second?
So we have a motion and a second.
Well,
Sorry.
Hey, Mr. Tyndall?
Let's make sure.
I mean, yeah. Mr. Tyndall? If we were to not, if this did not get approved tonight as it is in front of us right now, are we still able to, for staff to work with them about some other possible ideas? I mean, within their time frame, but are we still, I mean, this doesn't, if we don't approve this tonight, is it like there's no more discussion ever about it, or is it we could still have some discussion, to come up with some alternate ideas, whether it's pushing dirt over and selling it to you for pretty cheap since you're going to be paying for it, whatever, I don't know, but are there other?
Well, there's nothing, setting aside timing issues and all those, there's nothing that would preclude us from bringing back a project or bringing back whatever it is council feels like they need.
I don't want to interrupt your flow and your processes, but I don't want to walk away from here with an understanding I got to come back in another 6 weeks. It'll be too late. The folks that are selling us the land, four of the 6 people have died, and one is in serious health.
Okay.
So you're not comfortable with agreeing to bring us a detailed presentation?
No, I'm very comfortable with that. It just, if you deny me tonight, it takes time to do all of that detail and to bring whoever it is to the table to say, okay, we got a deal here. Let's work together.
And
if I was the guy building it and selling it, that would be a really easy thing to do, but I don't. Right?
The plus I think you've got going for you is the developers that you've referred to that might buy the property all understand what building in the gateway standards are.
Absolutely
and
correct.
So I don't think there would be any question as to, when we say come back with a planned development, basically it's designed to those standards that we expect to be in the gateway.
Okay.
There's no question about that.
Okay.
It's generally, when we comment on it, it's the changing of aesthetics. If you come back and it's got bright red shutters on it, and everybody on the planning commission goes, that's a little bit too much Roll Tide or something, but there may be a situation that there's details that would need to be changed, like where a sidewalk would be placed or something. And so, but they know what those things are. And before they buy the property from you, they're going to know what they're getting into if they understand that they're doing a PUD.
Correct.
So I don't think I think we may be overcomplicating it. I mean, as long as you agree that you will do on the city property what we're asking, I'm still good with my motion. If you don't agree with that, then...
No, I do.
Okay.
I don't want to back up on that at all. No, I totally agree.
We defer whether it takes another week.
Bill, Madeline, do y'all have any thoughts?
Well, and we control, this is such an important project for the gateway, because with the fountains, to me, this is kind of the entrance or the gateway to the gateway, and how it looks. And it's very important for us to raise the bar and make sure that we have a high standard. I think I think one way to control it and see how interested you are is to proceed with the contingency of the PUD and see what comes back. And the parties that you're talking about that are contingent to the sale, that are developing other parts of the property, You maybe need to get a further commitment from them or to have them part of the discussion so that if you plan on selling the condominium development to these people, that they're a part of that process as well, so that we see the total package of what your project is going to look like. I think that would give me a degree of assurance of the quality. So given that, I think I could support what was the motion that was made.
We have a motion and a second on the floor, but I don't know if y'all would entertain this.
Go ahead.
It seems like maybe a little confusion on what's required on a planned development in the gateway, like all the things that are required. And then there's also, I think, with listening to Mr. Tyndall about what happens if it purchases, it doesn't develop. It would be prudent to let the applicant meet with the planning staff to understand what's going to be required with a planned development, and also understand what the legalities that the city are going to require.
We can look at the.
But haven't we always on gateway projects had time limits as far as when they had to develop it, or the property would be turned back to the city, or
Correct.
it has to be developed in the manner that we suggest, or it has to be turned back to the city at whatever we paid for it, or they paid for it, I guess.
In some cases, we have had a time period for performance.
See, we have complications.
Not every.
We don't have it
I'm
in the
sorry, I thought
contract,
you were
though. That's not in this contract, though, is it?
It is not.
But if we were going to add that to the contract, I think I heard the applicant say he wouldn't want to do that. But, and again, I'm not sure we can really, if he's got to use the dirt from that piece of property, I'm not sure that would really work anyway unless we decided it was okay to do the dirt. I mean, look, here's my deal. I think this is pretty complex, and I'm sorry it's kind of come down to the last minute, and that your timing on this is sort of how it is. But there's a lot of moving parts here, and to me, it's kind of one of those things where if it's this difficult, it may just be worth us moving along. So I'm not going to be able to support it like it is, or even get into this PUD thing at this stage of the game. I just, I think you can still work with staff if 4 people vote for it, okay. But even if we don't, I think you might still want to put forth a little effort to work with staff to come up with something that we all think might be appropriate. That's all I'm going to say about it.
Are you able to define that? I thought we kind of aimed that direction with the PUD, that it defines it in terms of what you would expect from us as the developer.
A PUD, we get a full booklet,
right?
Many pages. It's going to cost you, whatever, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to do it. We see every little thing down to the porch equipment. The porch furniture, all that kind of stuff. It's going to take you beyond the amount of time period that you really have. So, it's kind of like I'm afraid we're in a situation right now where the time limit may just have us in a spot where this might not be what we really think is best. And
Well, my only thought is, Rick, is that if we put that as the contingency and he makes that determination that that's not cost effective for him to move the project forward, then that's his decision. If we make that as a contingency, that we feel like this project, given those contingencies in the contract, then he makes that decision. We put the boundaries on there to have that coming back, and so we haven't made the decision that the project can't go forward. He has, because of some economics or time frame or whatever the
I was just saying, based on what he said, the timing, he just agreed with me when I said that.
But the motion is to make the contract to sale contingent upon a PUD.
But we can't make it on a PUD because we can't change the zoning. We have to make it just like
we're talking, I think, and I may be wrong, let me state what I heard you say, and you can tell me this is what you said. I heard you say that we could write the contract contingent on the parameters of a PUD, requiring those as a parameter, not necessarily reflecting that it is a PUD, changing the zoning, but it is contingent upon the parameters of a PUD.
Right. The information that would normally be required in a PUD be brought before council, before the zoning commission for a recommendation up here. But yes, without a zoning change, you're just gathering the information that would normally be processed in that manner.
So see, it would not. It would go before maybe planning, but it wouldn't require planning approval. It would. The sale of the property has to be done through us. to the council. Is that,
Council would have to approve the sale of the property.
so the PUD approval would come, I mean, the documents are going to be before us, but,
What you would essentially be doing is giving your approval for development
right.
and allowing development to go forward, not as opposed to allowing zoning to happen consistent with what the plans are. What you'd be saying in the contract, if there wasn't a clawback where the property is returned, is you could sell the property contingent upon approval of plans that you've seen, and until then, there'd be no development on the property. I don't know if that's acceptable, but that would be, a remedy that you would have in lieu of a clawback where you take the property back.
Is it possible that we could have that, knowing that if we're going to require a plan development to be submitted, if we put a contingency in the contract, and obviously it sounds like the 2-point-some odd acres that the city has, that's really the driving force between whether this development happens or not. So if we put in the contingency that 2-point-some odd acres has to be a plan development, it has to go through the plan development process, and this is not in the motion, but I would recommend that the city does need to have a clawback in there that if for some reason the property owner decides that they're going to purchase the property and go through the plan development process and it doesn't work out, I think the last thing that we would want was to have sold a 3-acre piece of our property that doesn't get developed, and that hurts us on anything else. So if we put in the contract that this has to go through a plan development, we have to see streetscapes, we have to see all those things. If it does not go through the plan development process and it just sits there, then we have a clawback that we can buy the property back, like we did on Kasai with their Section 2. We had a clawback in there that if it didn't get developed, we could buy that back, and then that way the city's
same thing on fountains.
Yeah, the city's protected, and these are all contingencies we're asking to put in the contract. The applicant doesn't have to agree to that contract. So, but
Well, isn't it more efficient to try to talk it out with me here? I mean, we've been.
Well, that's not what we normally are not going to sit up here and negotiate contracts with.
That's not what I expect, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
That's not what I expect. We can't finance the project with those conditions, but I can, in fact, meet your conditions to meet the PUD. I've met with these people. As you've acknowledged, they have the knowledge and the experience and the interest in complying with the Gateway District.
So are you saying that as far as the contingents, you would prefer them not being in there? Because I think what you're saying is you prefer them not to be in there. What we're telling you is they have to be in there to protect both parties, even though you don't think it's protecting both parties. And I think for us to move on, we want to hear you say that it's okay to put this contingency in there. If not, I think
The contingency of the PUD.
the PUD and basically getting our property back if something happens.
My equity people, my lenders, nobody would support it.
Okay.
If you don't have support and you don't think you have support of your lenders,
Oh, I got
with
complete
that.
support of my lenders, but, Rob and I talked about this at great length, that the preponderance of the land that's being developed is private land.
All right.
I'm going to withdraw my motion.
I make the motion to defer.
Have a motion to defer?
Second.
Motion and second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll now move to board and commission appointments. You have the Murfreesboro Housing Authority to appoint Mr. Ricardo E. Jones to replace the expired term of Ms. Hattie Rankins.
So move.
Second.
Motion and second. Ms. Wright?
Vice Mayor Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Ms. Wright, do we have any beer permits?
We do not.
Any statements that need to be paid?
Yes, Mayor, there's one that should have been laid on your desk.
Got it?
Move we pay the bills. Sorry, Eddie.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second.
You
This
just got
is
completely thrown. I didn't realize it was paying the bills. Is
Yeah.
that what it was? Oh.
Yeah.
Ms. Wright, for call the roll.
No, I was
Vice
on my
Mayor
second.
Scales Harris.
You withdrawing your,
Good.
aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman. Mr. Wade. Mayor
Hurt his
McFarland.
feelings. I'm sorry.
Any other business from staff or city council?
Mayor, council, I did have one item. If you'll remember, during one of our recent workshops, I had shared with you that the police departments across the country are facing challenges recruiting employees. What we'd like to do is actually overstaff in terms of our hiring process for police. We are asking for 7 additional spots to what's already been approved in the budget, and we would ask for your approval on that. I will tell you that Chief Durr has made conditional offers of employment to 19. Now they've got to pass a medical exam and a background check, but assuming all those come back okay, he will have hired 19. But we want to hire an additional 7 so that as future vacancies occur with retirements or separations, that we're fully staffed. So a little bit of an unusual step, but it's our suggestion so that we can stay with a full boat.
I think we're very sure that we're going to have people go and retire, and this will work itself out, even if we do wind up overstaffed. So unless there's any other questions or comments, I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Vice Mayor Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Any other business to come before the city council? Mr. Lyons, are we planning on meeting next week?
You've got a 5 o'clock workshop on West Park. As far as the agenda, Ms. Moody will make that call on Tuesday.
Okay. All right. We'll stand adjourned.